Welcome back, I'm your host, Andrew Stafiri, and here are tonight's top stories. First off, Luke gets a home run absolutely crushed off him. Second, 6th graders are the first to discover aliens at the scene of David and Goliath. And finally, Haley becomes a Bears fan. Not just that, but we have a special guest, renowned missionary and author, Paul from Tarsus. All that coming up after the break.
Hi, I'm Paul, and I have Jesus Christ. And I'm Saul, and I don't have Jesus. With the calling of Christ, I build up preachers. More hand gestures. And I persecute preachers. With the help of Christ, I've become an accomplished writer. And I got last in my spelling bee. Christian. K-R-Y-S. Through Christ, I can see hope for the nations. Ever since Damascus, I can't see it all. Don't be like Saul. Accept Jesus today.
Welcome back. My first guest is Paul from Tarsus. He was a missionary all over the world. He was imprisoned for his faith, but you may know him for writing half of the New Testament. Please welcome Paul. Paul, always great to have you.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Paul, I saw that you were born in 280 in Tarsus. Why don't you tell me a little about your childhood and being born there?
Yeah, so I was born in Tarsus, which is like modern-day Turkey now. And I was born to a Jewish family. I grew up in the tribe of Benjamin. And when I was 10, I went to rabbi school to become a rabbi. I was taught by the famous Rabbi Gamali.
Oh, wow. Yes.
Yeah, very well known. He's a tough guy. He keeps you in line. But so yeah, I learned kind of all the things about how to be a Pharisee and run the temple and the things that we do at the temple.
Paul, I'm going to be straightforward with you and talk about the elephant in the room. Let's talk about Stephen and what happened there. Could you maybe give us and the audience a little rundown of what happened with Stephen?
So Stephen, yeah. Well, this is in my BC days, before Christ. Back when I originally grew up with the name Saul. And so when I was Saul, I used to persecute Christians because I was working at the Jewish temple, and I thought that Christians were this new religion that was just...
Just for some of us that may not know, can you just explain persecute for just a second so we can all know?
Yeah. So persecution is basically well, let me just tell you what persecution is by what I did to Stephen.
Oh,
so
great, yes.
Stephen's a famous Christian, and so I had him stoned.
Stoned?
Which means basically he was teaching that this Jesus guy was God, and we were like, no way, he's not God. Like, we're still waiting for God to come. And so some guys from the temple were like, can we go throw rocks at him until he dies? And I said, yes, that sounds like a great plan. And so we stoned Stephen and killed him with rocks because he was a Christian.
Wow. It's crazy to see that you went from that to now being a hero of the faith and writing all these accounts in the New Testament. Can you tell me how you went from persecuting the church to now being a hero of the church?
Yeah, so crazy story. Like I said, my BC days before Christ. I went by Saul, I was a leader in the temple, and so I was heading to Damascus, which is this town where I knew there was a couple Christians, and I was going to go pretty much stone them too, or at least bring them in and take them to jail and, really punish them for not believing in Judaism. And so I was headed on my way to Damascus, and all of a sudden, God appeared to me out of the sky. Like, he literally came down, it was and I was blinded. I couldn't see at all. And he says to me, Paul, why are you persecuting my people? And I was like, oh man, this is Jesus. This is the guy. Yeah, he's real. So
that's got to be pretty terrifying.
Yeah, so I was terrified, and not to mention I was still blind. all the way until I got to Damascus. He told me to go find this Christian who would help me to get my sight back. And so I came to him blind. Everyone was terrified because they thought I was coming to persecute him.
Of course, you just killed Stephen.
Exactly. But God came to them and gave them a vision telling them that I was going to arrive and I was now a believer. So that was how I became Saul, or how I became Paul. I changed my name after that so people would no longer think of me as Saul, but now they would know Paul is a Christian and is here to help the church.
So Paul, around 44 to 46 AD, you went on your first missionary journey. Can you tell me a little about that?
Yeah, my first missionary journey. Didn't really know what to expect that time around. First time we had kind of taken this gospel out to different countries. And so we ended up stopping on the Salmis Islands, the island of Paphos, the island of Perga. We stopped in Antioch, Lystra, and Derbe. So we hit all those cities and founded churches in pretty much every single one of them sharing the gospel.
Now, there's some stories circulating that some pretty crazy stuff went on during this first missionary journey. Is there any way you could maybe share one or two stories about it?
Oh boy, stories from the first missionary journey. Yeah, let's just say the Spirit was really working on that one. The first thing, when we were in Paphos, we came and we started kind of ministering to the king and telling the king about Christ and what he's done for him. And his sorcerer, or the guy who kind of was like his magician and right-hand man, started telling lies to him and being like, this is all fake, God's not real. And so God gave me this power to actually blind him. So I blinded him and was like, see, this is how powerful God is. And everyone was like, whoa! And yeah, so through the power of God, I was able to shut the mouth of the non-believer. That was pretty cool. So yeah, the second crazy story is in Lystra, actually. We were there preaching, and people kind of started getting upset with us. They didn't really like the message that they were all sinners and they needed Christ's help to save them. And so they got so mad, they actually decided to try stone me. And so as I'm preaching, all of a sudden, stones just start getting thrown at my face. And yeah, so they stoned me to the point where they thought I was dead. Wow. They actually dragged me completely out of the city. I was just unconscious, and they just left me there. They thought I was dead. But God was still faithful, and he woke me up, and he was like, get back in there and keep preaching. So I got up, dusted myself off, and walked straight back into the city and kept preaching. And they were so amazed that they actually listened the second time. They're like, wow, this is real. This God is pretty powerful. So.
Yeah. Well, I think I'm not the only one here that wants to hear a little about the Council of Jerusalem. It's a pretty big event, shaped a lot of our lives, and let's just hear a little bit of your side of the story.
Yeah, so the Council of Jerusalem, I don't remember exactly when that was.
I think it was 49 AD.
Yeah, sounds about right.
Okay.
So 49 AD, so I'm done with my first missionary journey, and I go back to Jerusalem because the Jewish Christians there were really upset that all these Christians that weren't Jewish, so all the people from like all the places I had been visiting, they weren't Jewish. And so they were like, well, if they're going to be Christians, they have to follow all the Jewish laws. And I was like, hold up, like, Jesus didn't say we have to follow all the laws to be saved. He just said we have to believe in him. And so I went there and I fought really hard to be like, the only thing you need to be saved is Jesus in your heart. And that all these new Christians didn't need to follow all the old Jewish laws. So it was a pretty heated debate, but in the end, I kind of came out on top, and they realized that, yeah, like, all you need is Christ in order to be saved. You don't have to follow every single law.
Paul, it says here that you went on your second missionary journey around 49 to 52 AD, and you stopped around Derbe, Lystra, Troas, Philippi, Thessalonica, Athens, Corinth, and Ephesus. But even more than that, there was a pretty significant event that happened involving Peter. Why don't you tell me a little about your interactions with Peter?
Ah, yes, Peter, the rock. Peter, yeah. Well, kind of similar to that whole Council of Jerusalem thing. You remember I was saying that the Jewish believers thought you had to follow these rules. Well, Peter was also one of these Jewish guys. So he came over to Antioch while we were there. We were having a big party. It was kind of like a New Year's party, but for Antioch. And so we're having this big feast and stuff. So he comes and he's hanging out with all these people from Antioch, all the non-Jewish believers, having a good time, just, being a part of it. But then some Jewish leaders come over and he immediately stopped hanging out with all the Gentiles. And he started pretending like he was too good and he didn't agree with everything they were doing. Again, going back to that whole Council of Jerusalem thing, he was pretending like he was following all the rules like the Jewish leaders were. And so I had to pull him aside and be like, hey man, God does not let us do this. You can't pretend to be something when you're with some friends and then pretend to be something else when you're with different friends. And so I had to kind of reprimand him a little bit and remind him that Jesus calls us to be the exact same no matter who we're hanging out with. We should always be a witness to him, not just act good when we're around certain people.
Well, Paul, we mentioned that you went on 4 missionary journeys, and we kind of talked about the first one and the second one a little bit. But can you bring us up to speed on the 3rd and 4th one?
So yeah, 3rd and 4th missionary journeys, a little less eventful when it comes to these huge big moments that happened. I was in prison a little bit more during these. People were kind of less excited to hear this gospel. It had kind of been going around for a while. People were not quite as receptive of it. But through those 3rd and 4th missionary journeys, I traveled to pretty much every single city all the way to Rome, which is pretty much at that time the whole known Roman Empire. So I was able to get to almost every single city that needed to hear the gospel.
Well, Paul mentioned it a little in the beginning. You spent some time in prison. Can you tell us a little about that?
Yeah, prison. Did some hard time, but really, prison was a place I got sent to quite a bit. I'd go to these countries and the leaders or the governors would be pretty mad at me for teaching the gospel because it went against their beliefs of multiple gods or that people should be worshiping even the king. So people got pretty upset with me. The first time was in Philippi. I got thrown into prison there. But a miracle happened. An earthquake happened, and actually all of our chains got broke loose. And
all the chains
exactly
were broken by an earthquake.
Broke every chain.
Break every chain.
That's what Jesus did. So we got out of that one, which was a miracle in itself. And then the second time was on my second missionary journey. I was in Caesarea. And basically the Jews actually got pretty mad at me and they put me in jail. And was in there for a while, had to talk to a lot of Roman officials and try and plead my way out. Eventually I was like, you know what, just take me to Caesar. I appealed all the way to Caesar, who was in charge of all of it. Yeah, big guy.
Big guy.
He's got coins with his face on it. I was like, he's going to listen to me. So they finally let me. They said, fine, we'll send you to Rome. But while I was on my way to Rome, my ship crashed on this little tiny island. And so we're all managed to survive this massive storm and our ship crashed. And the guards actually put me in charge. They were like...
They put a prisoner in charge of the rest of them?
They saw that I had something going on, that I was a good leader, and they're like, you know what, we're all stranded on this island together, so you're in charge.
Wow.
So that's not even the craziest part. Craziest part, while I'm on this island, I get bit by this poisonous snake. Extremely poisonous. I should have died immediately, but it didn't have any effect on me. God again did another miracle, and I was able to survive this snake bite with no harm. And all the people on the island who lived there were like, whoa, there's something crazy going on here.
This guy's got some power.
And so I took that and was pointed to Jesus.
Look, it's not me, it's him.
Exactly.
Okay.
So I pointed it straight to Jesus, and basically a ton of people on the island were able to get saved because they realized how powerful this God was. So that was awesome. And then they finally rescued us, brought us to Rome. They kind of forgot about me at that point. They didn't really want that much to do with me. I got put on house arrest for a little bit, but that just meant I could go travel and teach more churches while I was on this. And they finally were just like, you know what, you can be free. That was it. So that was it. And then the third one, not as happy. Actually got. I died.
Yeah. It says you died in 68 AD.
Yeah, 68 is not a good year for the apostle.
Wow.
Sure.
Let me tell you, whatever you're doing, keep it up, because you look great.
Well, thanks.
Being dead.
God does miracles, you know. So yeah, I died that time in prison. So not a good one, but.
Well, Paul, we talked a little about your journey and in prison. I mean, we know you're a missionary, but you're also an accomplished writer. I mean, you wrote so many books in the New Testament. Tell us about that.
Yeah, well, I have a little cheat sheet here, because I did write a lot of books, you know.
Right.
So just to, remind myself of the points of each one, kind of separate them into categories for you guys to make them a little easier. The first group is what I just call like my general books.
General, that's an easy title.
Weren't really written during a specific time or to a specific person. They were more to like churches and stuff. So my first book that I wrote was 1 Corinthians. I wrote it to the Church of Corinth, and I nicknamed that one "Spanking the Saints." Exactly. Yep, wow. You heard it. Spanking the Saints.
That's
basically the Christians were just not acting like Christians, and they were doing a lot of things they shouldn't. So I had to
tell them what's up.
Get them in line, like just a parent spanking their kid.
Yeah.
It hurt me more than it hurt them,
Always does.
Always does.
Always does.
Second book I wrote was 1 Thessalonians. That one I nicknamed "Stay on Target." I used the words faith, love, and hope a lot, just to remind them, like, aim for those. Shoot straight.
Shoot straight, yeah, shoot straight.
So, I could also name it "Shoot Straight."
That would have been good. Too late now.
Next time, next book. 2 Corinthians, I wrote, nicknamed that one "Anatomy of the Apostle." Anatomy of the Apostle. Basically, telling them what an apostle is, what they look like. I use myself as an example of like, I am Paul. I did this. You know me. So like, use that as kind of a way to show people what an apostle should be.
Right, and then lead them back to Christ.
Exactly. Yeah. Always lead them to Christ.
Always bring it back to Christ, even in your writings.
Yes, absolutely. 2 Thessalonians I wrote, nicknamed that "Work While You Wait." Rolls off the tongue pretty.
Work while you wait.
Work while you wait. Yep, it's a good title. I'm proud of that one. Basically, while we wait for Jesus to come back, like, don't be lazy. Yeah. Get out there. Share Jesus with your friend. Do missions. Take care of people. That kind of stuff.
Of course.
What you should do. Galatians I wrote. Call that "Saved by Faith Alone." Again, going off of that whole Council of Jerusalem thing of all you need is Jesus. Reminding people, all you need is Jesus to be saved. That's it. Jesus. And then the other one, Romans. Big book.
It's a big one.
Lots of stuff in that one. I nicknamed that Theology 101.
It's like that could be a class or
you
something.
can pretty much take it as a class, yeah. There's a lot of homework in it because you've got to pretty much read the same verse multiple times because it's full of a lot of good stuff. So yeah, if you ever, theology, study of God is what that is. So if you ever want to know who God is and what He does, Romans is your book.
Into Romans.
My second group is the pastoral epistles. Basically, I wrote these to pastors or people in charge of the church. First one I wrote to 1 Timothy. I nicknamed that the leadership manual. So what you need to know to be a leader for Timothy.
Yeah, I think he's coming on the show later this year. So he should be
you got Timothy.
Oh, Timothy's a great guy. He always makes an appearance.
Oh, man. Side note, fun fact about Timothy. The last time we saw each other, we both cried.
Wow, just
with
really
each
dropped
other.
that one on the audience.
Oh, Timothy.
Just maybe keep it yourself together, Paul.
He's got a special place in my heart. Sorry. All right.
We all love Timothy. But we due to the sake of time, we're gonna have to keep moving. I'm sorry. We'll talk about it later when he comes.
So the next book in the pastoral epistles is Titus.
Titus.
Nickname that one Conduct Manual, similar to Leadership Manual, but this one is how you should act.
Right.
Not just what you need, but how you should act as a leader.
Of course.
So those are my two pastoral ones, and then my last group, real tough. These are the prison epistles. Tough ones to
While you're
write.
in the joint.
While I was in prison, I had a lot of time on my hands. In between playing catch in the yard, I was writing epistles. So, the first epistle I wrote was Colossians. I nicknamed that one Commander-in-Chief. Basically, you know, like the president is called Commander-in-Chief. He's in charge of like the whole country, has the final word. Well, Jesus is Commander-in-Chief of the world. So, can't really get any higher than that.
Nope.
So, if you want to know about Jesus being the boss, Colossians.
Jesus is in charge.
Second one I wrote was Ephesians. Nicknamed that one Bodybuilding. I was during my first stay when I was getting swole, you know, lifting those.
Really doing those push-ups in your cell.
Yeah, I found out you can put 2 rocks on the side of a pole and push them like this. I might call it like a table press. You lay on like a bench, but I don't know what I would call it. I'm working on it. It's a new workout.
It's a work in progress.
We found out. Table press, I think is what I'm going to call it.
Yeah.
The other one I wrote was Philemon. Basically, named that one Bondage to Brotherhood. It's a long story short, it's about a guy who runs away from his master and helps me out a lot, and so I'm like, hey, go back to your master, and I wrote a letter that says, like, treat this guy like a brother because he is a brother in Christ.
Right.
So how we should, you know, act with each other. Philippians was the next one I wrote, called Happily Humble. Basically self-explanatory. Be happy and be humble. Don't get too filled up with don't get filled up with pride. Philippians struggled a little bit, you know.
You don't have to tell me twice.
Yeah.
I met some Philippians.
But no one's perfect, but
no,
they needed the humble, happy message. And then the last one, back to Timothy. Probably my last letter I overwrote. There's some heart in that letter. To Timothy, my boy. But I nicknamed that one Truth. Basically, what is truth and how do you guard the truth is what Timothy's about. So it's kind of what each of my books is about, kind of giving you a quick overlay. But you should definitely read them.
Yeah, check them out.
Check them out. They're at Christian bookstores. They're normally under the Bible.
Yeah, Bible.
They're part of the bigger book called the Bible.
Yeah, it's like a collection of many words.
It is. So, yeah.
Well, Paul, it looks like we're out of time. Hope all you guys enjoyed this. I know I certainly did. It's always a pleasure to have you.
It's good to be here, always.
Thanks for all you've done, you know?
Yeah.
Thank you. That's our show. Tune in next time. Paul's boy Titus. Timothy, not Titus. Timothy will be here. Titus is later in the year.